So I'll share my desktop.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you see my desktop?
Oh no, ma'am. It has not started yet, ma'am.
Okay, I think it will start a little later. Just wait.
Yeah. Yeah, ma'am. Now we can see it, ma'am.
Okay. So in the last class, we have discussed the shape function for rectangular element using Lagrange polynomial. So there is another method that is called shape function for serendipity group. That method is slightly different, so I leave the topic. It will need another half an hour. So therefore, that you can study yourself later on. For exam purpose also, you can leave this particular portion. Okay. Shape function for rectangular group of serendipity group of rectangular element. I will omit this particular topic. So now I'll go to shape function for triangular element using natural coordinates. We have already discussed, derived the shape function for triangular element using the Cartesian coordinate using polynomials. Here we will derive the shape function using natural coordinates. We have already discussed what is natural coordinate. They are dimensionless and they are defined with respect to the element rather than the global coordinate system. So it is local for a particular element. And you know that its value varies from -1 to +1 when we use a bar element or a rectangular element. But this is slightly different in triangular element. So for a triangular element, let us consider triangular element. Here another triangular element we'll consider. So 1, 2, 3 are the nodes. And the coordinates are x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3. They are the Cartesian coordinate with respect to some global coordinate system. Okay, so let us select any point within the element P. It has coordinate x and y. Okay, so we need to find out the shape function for this element. So what will be the values of the shape function for this particular point? If I want to find out the displacement of this particular point, what will be the values of n1, n2, n3 in terms of the displacement of the nodes? So displacement of the nodes will be u1, v1 at node 1, u2, v2 at node 2, u3, v3 at node 3. So we have to relate this displacement at point P with the displacement of the nodes using this shape function. So this shape function will derive using the natural coordinate system. Okay, so here you can see that from the point P, I have drawn 3 lines to the node 1, 2, and 3. So this will divide this triangle into 3 triangles. So this triangle P23 is just opposite to the node 1. The triangle P23 is opposite to the node 1. So we'll name this triangle as A1, area of this triangle as A1. Then triangle P13 is opposite to the node 2. So this area will name as A2. Similarly, the triangle P12 is opposite to the node 3. So we'll name this triangle as A3. Okay. Then you can see that also using the formula of area of a triangle, what will be the area of triangle A1? A1 will be equal to determinant of the matrix 1, 1, 1. X, x2, x3, y, y2, y3 into half. That will be A1. Because these are the coordinates. X, y is the coordinate of P. X2, y2 is the coordinate of node 2. X3, y3 is the coordinate of node 3. So these are the coordinates of this particular triangle having area A1. Therefore, A1 can be defined like this. Similarly, A2 can be defined as half into 1, 1, 1, x, y, it is the coordinate of P, x1, y1, it is the coordinate of node 1, x3, y3, it is the coordinate of node 3. So this will be the area of this triangle 1P3. So these are the coordinates of the triangle having area A2. So this way we can define A2. Similarly, you can define A3. A3 is a triangle P1, 2, opposite to node 3. So the coordinates are x, y, x1, y1, x2, y2. So determinant of this matrix will give you the area of the triangle A3. Okay, so that way if we define these areas, then we can see that if we define some parameters, let's say R is equal to A1 by A, S is equal to A2 by A, T is equal to A3 by A, then we'll see that if we define R as T like this, where A1 I have defined, A2 I have defined, A3 I have defined, and A is the area of this whole triangle, 1, 2, 3. Then we can see that the value of this R as T, their values will be, R will be 1 at node 1 and 0 at node 2 and 3. S will be 1 at node 2 and 0 at node 1 and 3. T will be 1 at node 3 and 0 at node 1 and 2. So I have already discussed what is written here, where P is having coordinate xy, it is any point within the triangle, and A is the area of the triangle defined as this. Okay, so A is the area of the whole triangle. So if we define R as T like this, we can see that the value of R as T at nodes 1, 2, 3 are 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. That means R is 1 at node 1, 0 at node 2 and 3, I have already told. S is 0 at node 1, 1 at node 2 and 0 at node 3. And T is 0 at node 1, 0 at node 2 and 1 at node 3 respectively. So from this definition, it is clear that R as T, if I add, then it will be equal to 1. So it means, what we can see is, R as T follows the properties of shape functions. They follows the properties of the shape functions. Therefore, we can define R is equal to N1, S is equal to N2, and R1 minus R minus S is equal to T is equal to N3, because R plus S plus T is equal to 1. Therefore, T we can define as T is equal to 1 minus R minus S. So that way, our shape function N1 at node 1 will be equal to R. What was R? R is equal to A1 by A. Shape function for node 2 will be equal to N2, that is equal to S. S is equal to what? A2 by A. And we don't need to find out T, because T we can directly determine from R and S, as R plus S plus T is equal to 1. So T will be equal to 1 minus R minus S. So directly you can get the value of T, you don't have to define T. So that is your value of N3. So these are the shape functions for a triangle, constant strain triangle, that is 3-noded triangular element in terms of natural coordinate system. So R as T are called as the natural coordinate of the triangle, and N1 is equal to R, N2 is equal to S, N3 is equal to 1 minus R minus S, where R as T can be defined. So these are the shape functions for a triangular element. So shape function is over with this explanation. Now we can move to the next topic. So for this, I will use another file. We'll discuss now the variational formulation of FEM. Variational formulation of FEM means how we can derive the finite element equation using the concept of variation. Using the concept of variation, we have already discussed the Rayleigh-Ritz method and Galerkin's method. So using these two methods, we can derive the finite element equation. We already know what are these methods. These methods are some approximate method of analysis. We have seen that these methods can be used to solve problems, like we have already discussed how to solve a bar, how to solve a beam using these methods. Okay, Rayleigh-Ritz method and Galerkin's method. But only differences between this FEM and Rayleigh-Ritz and Galerkin's method are, in FEM, the domain to be analyzed will be discretized into small region or areas or length. But in Rayleigh-Ritz and Galerkin's method, the whole domain will be used. Whatever approximation will be applied in the analysis, that will be applied to the whole domain. For example, in Rayleigh-Ritz and Galerkin's, we have approximated the displacement using polynomial. Then we solve for that polynomial. So that polynomial, whatever solution we got, that was applicable for the whole domain. But in FEM, what will happen? We will discretize the domain to be analyzed, and then this approximate displacement function will be defined for this each and every element, for each and every discretized portion of the domain to be analyzed. Therefore, approximation will be applied in the small region. So when we combine this solution for the whole domain, the error involved will be less. But if we apply the approximation for the whole domain, that is one equation for the whole domain, then your error involved will be more. But if we apply the approximation for the small region, and then the accumulated error will be very less. So that is the beauty of the FEM. So basically this FEM and Rayleigh's or Galerkin's method, they are more or less similar. So only thing is in FEM we discretize the domain. Then now we will apply this approximation in these elements, in this small region. So now how to apply this approximation? Then how we'll get the FEM equations, those we will discuss in this particular topic. Okay. So we already know strain at a point, we have 6 independent components that can be written like this. Epsilon is equal to epsilon xx, epsilon yy, epsilon zz, epsilon xy, epsilon yz, epsilon zx transpose. So transpose means it will be a column vector, but we can write as a row vector using transpose. So similarly, sigma also can be written. The p is missing here. So sigma can be written like this. So at a point, we will have 6 independent components of stresses. We will have 6 independent components of strains. Okay. Now these strains can be related to the displacement at a point. So at a point in 3D, we may have 3 components of displacement u, v, w. So strains can be related to this u, v, w using these equations. I have already given you these equations in the class. So epsilon xs will be equal to del u by del x, epsilon yy del v by del y, epsilon z, zz, it should be zz, del w by del x, epsilon xy is equal to del u by del y plus del v by del x. But usually epsilon xy, epsilon yz, epsilon zx, they are small strains, so there should be one half term here. I have omitted, that doesn't matter, only half term, because when we use the half term, they will be called a small strain. When you don't use the half term, that will be called as engineering strain. That also I have already discussed. Okay. So these equations, the relationship between strain and displacement, they can be written in matrix vector form like this. You can see here. The first equation is epsilon x is equal to del u by del x. So I can write as del by del x into u plus 0 into v plus 0 into w. So this is my first equation. Second equation is epsilon yy, which is equal to del v by del y. So 0 into u plus del by del y into v plus 0 into w. Then third equation is equal to del w by del x. So it will be 0 into u plus 0 into v plus del by del z into w. So that way you can write epsilon xy. Epsilon xy will be equal to del by, it is del u by del y plus del v by del x. So it will be del by del y of u into del by del x of v plus, sorry, not into, plus 0 into w. Similarly, epsilon, this is not delta, it should be epsilon. I have written delta here. There should be epsilon. So there is a mistake here. It should be epsilon here. Okay, oh sorry, I cannot write symbol here. Anyway, leave it. So this delta xy I have written, it must be epsilon. Okay, please correct it. This is epsilon xy, this is epsilon yz, this is epsilon zx. So epsilon xy will be equal to del by del y of u plus del by del x of v plus 0 into w. Similarly, epsilon yz will be equal to 0 into u plus del by del z of v plus del by del y of w. Similarly, epsilon zx will be equal to del by del z of u plus 0 into v plus del by del x of w. Okay, so these are the relationship between strain and displacement. Now here this u, v, w are the displacement at any point. So it will be within some element. So within an element we may have any arbitrary point. So in that particular point, u, v, w are the displacement, and these are the strain at that point, which can be related by this matrix. Again, this displacement u, v, w, they can be related to the nodal displacement for that particular element that we have already discussed. They can be related to the nodal displacement of an element using shape functions. So u, v, w will be function of the nodal displacement of a particular element through the shape functions. Okay. So for 2D problem, if we consider two-dimensional analysis, so here equation A is for three-dimensional analysis, but we will mostly concentrate on 2 dimension and 1 dimension. So for 2D problem, epsilon will have 3 components. We will omit the z-axis. So we will have only epsilon xx, epsilon yy, and epsilon xy. The terms containing z will be 0, or it will be dependent on this particular strain components. Therefore, they can be omitted. So we will have only 3 independent components of strains in case of a 2D problem, which may be a plane strain problem or plane stress problem. That also I have discussed. So in this case, our matrix, this matrix will be modified like this. Epsilon xx will be equal to function of u and v. Epsilon y, epsilon xz, they will be function of u and v alone. W will be omitted. So equation B is for any particular two-dimensional problem in general. Okay. Then this u and v at a point can be related to the network is better, but u and v can be related to the nodal displacement here. Yeah, we can have the displacement at a point within the element in terms of the nodal displacement like this. So u will be equal to n1 u1 plus n2 u2 plus n3 u3 plus nn and unn, depending on the number of nodes. So if we have nn number of node, nn stands for number of node, then we will have nn number of terms here. For example, if we consider a triangular element, then we will have only 3 terms. If we have a rectangular element with 4 nodes, we will have 4 terms. So nn is the number of nodes. Similarly, v will be equal to n1 v1 plus n2 v2 plus n3 v3 plus nn vnn. So again, nn is the number of nodes. If we have 3-noded triangular element, we will have 3 terms. If we have 4-noded rectangular elements, we will have 4 terms. So depending on the number of nodes in a 2D element, we will have number of terms in the expression of u and v in terms of the shape functions. So n1, n2, n3 are the shape function of the given nodes for the different nodes of an element. I have written here where nn is equal to number of nodes in an element. Then these 2 equations we can write in matrix vector notation like this. So uv is equal to n1 into u1 plus 0 into v1 plus n2 into u2 plus 0 into v2 and so. So we will have nn number of n3 here in this particular vector. So this vector u1, v1, u2, v2, u3, v3, un and vnn, this is your nodal displacement vector, which will be known to us. From FEM analysis, we will get this particular vector. We will solve for this particular vector of an element. When we get the nodal displacement for the whole domain, from that domain we can find out this nodal displacement for a particular element based on the number of nodes to which it is connected. So we will assume that this is known to us. So u and v, displacement at any point within the element, can be determined from this equation in terms of the shape function. So this shape function will be function of the x and y if we use Cartesian coordinates, or they will be function of xi and eta if we use natural coordinate. So for a particular point, this n1, n2, n3, n4 or whatever, it can be determined. They can be determined from this coordinate of that point. So once n1, n2, n3, n4 will be known to us, once nodal displacements will be known to us, then we can determine the corresponding displacement at that particular point using this equation. So u and v can be written like this. So in short form, we can write u is the displacement vector at a point, is equal to shape function matrix into q, where I have used this q term for the nodal displacement of an element. Q I have used here as the nodal displacement vector of an element, for element, not for the whole system. It is for one particular element. So U is the displacement at any point within that element. N is the shape function for that particular element. Okay. So where U is equal to UV, displacement at the point within the element, N is equal to matrix of the shape function, Q is the nodal displacement vector of an element. Okay. Next, using this equation C in the equation B, what is my equation C? This equation. U is written in terms of nodal displacement and shape function. So if I use this equation in equation B, what was my equation B? This is my equation B. Strain is equal to, or epsilon xx epsilon y epsilon xy is equal to this matrix into UV. So this UV I have written as U, vector U. So epsilon can be written in terms of this, and this can be replaced by equation C. So if I replace by equation C, what will get? Here you see. So I have replaced the equation UV. I have replaced this UV in this equation. This I have used in terms of UV in equation B. So epsilon xx, epsilon y, epsilon xy is equal to del by del x 0, 0, del by del y, del by del y, del by del x. Then this is shape function matrix. Then this is nodal displacement vector. Okay. Now if I multiply this, this can be determined. So after multiplying this, we will see that this matrix will be derivative of the shape function. This will be derivative of the shape function, and multiplication of this matrix will give you one matrix which will be called as B matrix. So that will be called as B matrix, and it is called as strain displacement matrix because this matrix relates the strain at a point to the nodal displacement vector. It's very, very important. So strain at a point can be related to the nodal displacement vector using this strain displacement matrix. So which will be nothing but after multiplication we will get, it will be a matrix containing derivative of the shape functions. So size of the matrix will be equal to 2 by 2 into degree of freedom. Okay. It will depend on number of nodes in an element. For example, if we have a 3-noded triangular element, the size will be 2 by 6. 2 by 6 because we have 3 nodes. At each node we have 2 degrees of freedom. So therefore it will be 2 into 3, 6. So it will be 2 by 6. Similarly, if we use a 4-noded rectangular element, for a 4-noded rectangular element we have 4 nodes. Each node has 2 degrees of freedom. Therefore, total number of degree of freedom will be equal to 4 into 2, 8. Therefore, size of this matrix will be equal to 2 by 8. Okay. So then, if we multiply it by 3 by 2, 2 will be cancelled. Then it will be 3 by 8 for 4-noded rectangular element. Then 3 by 6 for 3-noded rectangular element. So that way we can have this B matrix. It can be simply called as B matrix, or it is also called as strain displacement matrix. It is usually denoted by B. Universally in all books you will find this matrix denoted by B in FEM. Okay. So B matrix, if we multiply this with this, it will be in this form. Del by del x of n1 0, del n1 by del n1 by del x 0, del n2 by del x 0, del nn by del x 0, like that. First row. Second row will be equal to 0, then plus del n1 by del y 0, del n2 by del y 0, like that. So if you multiply, ultimately we will get this matrix. Okay. So B will be equal to del n1 by del x 0, del n2 by del x 0, del n3 by del x 0. That will, the number of size depend on the number of nodes in the element. Okay. So size will be 3 by degree of freedom in the element. For example, in case of a triangular, 3-noded triangular element, total degree of freedom is equal to 3 into 2, 6. So this will be 3 by 6. And in case of a 4-noded rectangular element, it will be 3 into 4 into 2, that is 8. 3 by 8. So that way we can find out the size of the B matrix. Now let us derive this B matrix for a 2-noded bar element. We have discussed in general using 2-dimensional elements. Now we will derive this B matrix for a 2-noded bar element. Okay. So let us consider two noded bar element, node 1, node 2, U1 and U2 are the displacement at node 1 and 2. This xi, this point is any point having coordinate xi, and displacement at this point is u. Here xi is equal to -1 at node 1, xi is equal to +1 at node 2. So we have used natural coordinate system. Now for a two-noded bar element, each node will have 1 degree of freedom because it is a 1D element. Therefore, we will have only one component of strain and one component of displacement, that is along xi direction or x direction. So strain will be equal to du by dx. Now u at any point can be given as n1 u1 plus n2 u2. Therefore, what will be epsilon? Epsilon is equal to del u by del x. So it will be del n1 by del x into u1 plus del n2 by del x into u2. That will be my strain. Now n1 is function of xi and n2 is function of xi. So directly you cannot find out this derivative. Then you have to use the chain rule of differentiation. Del n1 by del x will be equal to del n1 by del xi by del x. Del n2 by del x will be equal to del n2 by del xi by del x. Okay. So simply I have written like this. Epsilon is equal to del n by del x, del n2 by del x, u1, u2. So that we can find out the B matrix. So this will be my B matrix. This matrix relates the strain at a point with the nodal displacement. So this will be my B matrix. We need to derive this B matrix. I hope you have understood, all of you. So what is my B matrix? B is equal to a del n1 by del x and del n2 by del x. As we have, it is a 1D problem. So size of B matrix will be 1 by, what is the number of nodes? We have 2 nodes. Each node we have 1 degree of freedom. So 2 into 1, it will be 2. So size of this matrix will be 1 by 2. Now let us use natural coordinate system. N1 is equal to 1 minus xi by 2. N2 is equal to 1 plus xi by 2. So this shape function you have to remember. For a two-noded bar element, you have to remember this shape function. If you are asked to derive the B matrix for a two-noded bar element, you don't have to derive it. So few values you have to remember. For example, you have to remember the shape functions for a two-noded bar element. Shape functions for triangular elements in terms of natural coordinate system. Shape function for four-noded rectangular elements. So these you have to remember. These are very, very simple. I have already told you the tricks also how to remember. So you can remember easily. You can remember here. The value of xi is -1 at node 1. So shape function will be equal to 1 minus xi by 2. Value of xi is 1 at node 1. So it will be 1 plus xi by 2. So that way you can check n1 must be 1 at node 1. So if I put xi is equal to -1, it will be 1 minus -1 by 2. So 2 by 2, 1. It must be 0 at node 2. So n1 is equal to 1 minus 1 because xi is equal to 1 at node 2. So 1 minus 1, it will be 0. Similarly, n2 will be 1 at node 2 and 0 at node 1. So that way you can check. If you can remember, you can check whether you are correct or not by using the property of the shape functions. Okay, so we are using natural coordinate. These are the shape function. Now we need to find out the derivatives of this shape function. We need to find out del n1 by del x. So that is equal to del n1 by del xi by del x. Then we know 1 plus xi is equal to 2 by l x minus x1. I have already told you 2 times. I have told you this is the relationship between xi coordinate and x coordinate. Directly you can determine for a bar element that you already know. So therefore from here what we will get, del dxi by dx will be equal to 2 by l. This we have already used also. Dxi by dx is equal to 2 by l. So therefore dn1 by dx will be equal to dn1 by dxi into dxi by dx, that is 2 by l. Then we will derive with respect to xi the shape function n1. N1 is 1 minus xi by 2. After derivative we will get this value. So ultimately we will get 1 by l into d by dxi of 1 minus xi, it will be -1. So it is -1 by l. So dn1 by dx is equal to -1 by l. Similarly, we can find out dn2 by dx. dn2 by dx will be equal to dn2 by dxi into dxi by dx. So finding the derivative, we will get 1 by l. So therefore, B matrix is equal to -1 by l, 1 by l. We have two entries here. So B is equal to -1 by l, 1 by l. Size of B matrix for a bar element, two-noded bar element is 1 by 2. So we have derived the B matrix for two-noded bar element. Similarly, we can derive the B matrix for a three-noded bar element. So I'll quickly go because method is same. Only thing is here we have 3 nodes. At 3 nodes, 1, 2, 3, we have nodal displacement U1, U2, U3. So this is any arbitrary point having coordinates xi, and displacement here is u. So this displacement can be related to the nodal displacement U1, U2 and U3 using the step function N1, N2, N3. So U is equal to N1 U1 plus N2 U2 plus N3 U3. So this can be written in this form N1, N2, N3, U1, U2, U3. Next, what is epsilon? Epsilon is equal to du by dx. So if I find the derivative, we will get dn1 by dx, dn2 by dx, dn3 by dx, u1, u2, u3. So this is my B matrix. Epsilon is equal to B into Q, where Q is the nodal displacement vector of the element. Here we have 3 noded bar element, so we have 3 degree of freedom, that is u1, u2, u3. So our epsilon will be equal to B into Q. Next, we have to find out this B. So B is what? B is dn1 by dx, dn2 by dx, dn3 by dx, right? So the size of the B matrix now is 1 by 3. Why 1 by 3? Because it is a 1D element. Plus we have 3 nodes. So total degree of freedom is 3 into 1, that is 3. Each node has 1 degree of freedom, that is why total degree of freedom is 3. So size of B matrix will be equal to 1 by 3. So the same procedure can be followed to find out dn1 by dx, just like 2 noded bar element. dn by dx is equal to dn1 by dxi into dxi by dx. Now what are the values of this n1, n2, n3? We have derived for 3 noded bar element. N1, n2, n3 are given like this. n1 is equal to xi into xi minus 1 by 2. n2 is equal to 1 minus xi square. n3 is equal to xi into xi plus 1 by 2. So these are the step functions for a 3-noded bar element. Then we'll find the derivatives of these step functions, that is dn1 by dx. Ultimately we'll get 2 xi minus 1 by L. dn2 by dx, it will be minus 4 xi by L. Then dn3 by dx, it will be 2 xi plus 1 by L. Then we got B is equal to 2 xi minus 1 by L minus 4 xi by L, 2 xi plus 1 by L. So here what you see? For a 3-noded bar element, B is function of xi. It is linear function of xi. So that means what? What we got for 2-noded bar element? For 2-noded bar element, we got constant term. B was minus 1 by L and 1 by L. So they are constant. But for 3-noded bar element, we got B as function of xi, linear function of xi. And what is strain? Strain is equal to, you see here, strain is equal to B into Q. Strain is equal to B into Q. So B is function of xi, linear function of xi. That means strain will be linear function of xi. So it varies linearly over the element. Q is constant. Q is the nodal displacement vector for a given element, for a given problem. Q is constant. So B is varying within the element depending on the value of the xi. So therefore, within an element, the strain will vary linearly for a 3-noded bar element. But for a 2-noded bar element, what we have seen, B is constant. And what was strain? Strain was equal to epsilon is equal to B into Q. So B is constant, Q is a nodal displacement, it is constant. That means epsilon is constant throughout the element. Have you seen? So by increasing the number of one node, we have increased the variation of displacement by 1 degree. 1 order, sorry, not degree. We have increased the variation of displacement by 1 order. Similarly, strain is also increased by 1 order. So what we have seen here, for a 2-noded bar element, displacement will vary linearly and strain is constant. For a 3-noded bar element, displacement will vary quadratically and strain is varying linearly. Now let us try to find out the strain displacement matrix for a beam element. Okay, so for a beam element, this formula you should know. Strain energy is given by half m square by EI into dx, and where m is equal to bending moment, EI d square y by dx square, where y I have used for vertical displacement. Here we will use V. In FEM, in place of Y, we will use V. Right? So for a beam, M by I is equal to sigma by y, where sigma is bending stress. So we'll use the term bending stress to derive, because the displacement will be function of the stress. So displacement will be function of the bending stress, that you know it is function of bending moment ultimately. So you can find out the displacement in a beam by using bending moment. So therefore bending stress is function of bending moment. So strain will be function of bending moment, displacement will be function of bending moment, right? So in case of a beam, the bending moment can be considered as the stress resultant. Again, we have M is equal to EI d square y by dx square. So we can write like this, EI d square y by dx square. Now if I consider prismatic bar, I will be constant throughout the bar. So d square y by dx square can be considered as the strain resultant. Okay, where M is the stress resultant and d square y by dx square can be considered as the strain resultant. That is the difference between beam and a bar element. So strain will be equal to d square by y by dx square, but in context to FEM, in place of y is the vertical displacement of a beam, but here we are using x as the coordinate. Therefore, in place of y, we will use v. We use UVW as the displacement. So y will be displaced, y will be replaced by v. For a it is called strain resultant, not strain. Strain resultant will be equal to d square v by dx square. Now what is v? For a beam, I hope the internet is okay. For a beam, v is equal to n1 v1 plus n2 theta 1 plus n3 v2 plus n4 theta 2. That I have already discussed. V is the function of the degree of freedom of an element. For a beam element, we have 4 degrees of freedom. V1, theta 1, V2, theta 2. So V will be function of all these 4 degrees of freedom. So V is written as N1, V1 plus N2, theta 1 plus N3, V2 plus N4, theta 2. Where N1, N2, N3, N4 as the shape functions. Okay, that we have already derived for a beam element, right? Then what will be d square v by dx square? Because we need to find out the strain. We need to find out the strain. This is the strain resultant of a beam. So d square v by dx square will be equal to d square n1 by dx square v1 plus d square n2 by dx square theta 1 plus d square n3 by dx square v2 plus d square n4 by dx square theta 2. So if we write in matrix vector notation, d square v by dx square will be equal to in this form. So this is my V matrix. This is my v1 theta 1 v2 theta 2. It is my nodal displacement vector, and this matrix is my strain displacement matrix, B matrix. So strain will be equal to B into Q, where B is equal to d square n1 by dx square, d square n2 by dx square, d square n3 by dx square, d square n4 by dx square. So our aim is to derive this B matrix. So we need to determine the determinant derivative d square ni by dx square, where 1 varies from 1 to 4. Now how to find out this derivative? We can again use the chain rule of differentiation here. So dn by dx, ni you can write out simply n, I stands for 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have written in general for any shape function. So dni by dx will be equal to dni by dxi, dxi by dx. Okay, and dxi by dx is equal to 2 by L, we know. And dni by dxi, putting the value of ni like n1, n2, n3, n4, we can find out dni by dxi. Then what will be d by dx from here? D by dx ni is equal to this. Then what will be d by dx? If I remove ni from both the side, d by dx is equal to 2 by L d by dxi. So using, so you can find the second derivative. Okay. So d square ni by dx is equal to d by dx of dni by dxi. What is d by dx? D by dx is equal to 2 by L d by dxi. So 2 by L d by dxi, and dni by dx will be equal to 2 by L dni by dxi. So that will give you 4 by L square d square ni by dxi square. You can also calculate directly. First you find out dni by dx, then you find out d square ni by dx. Ultimately you will get the same values. It doesn't matter how do you calculate. But here I have used this technique. I have calculated the value of d by dx, and then we have put this value. So ultimately d square ni by dx square will be equal to 4 by L square d square ni by dxi square. Now ni's are function of xi, so you can directly calculate d square ni by dx square. So what are the values of this ni in terms of natural coordinates? we have already calculated, we have already derived this function for a beam in terms of natural coordinates. N1 is this, N2 is this, N3 is this, N4 is this. This we have already calculated. Then just you find that the derivative. Okay, d square Ni by dz square will equal to 4 by L square, d square by dz square of this. So this now you can calculate. Ultimately, d square N1 by dz square will equal to 6 xi by L square. D square N2 by dz square will be equal to 3 xi minus 1 by L. Then d square N3 by dx square will be equal to minus 6 xi by L square. D square N4 by dx square will be equal to 1 by 2L, 2 plus 6 xi is equal to 3 xi plus 1 by L. So once you know these values, then you can get the B matrix. So this is the B matrix for a beam element. Okay. So we got the B matrix for a beam element. Therefore, strain resultant will be equal to d square V by dx square, that is B into Q, where B is equal to this. Q is the nodal displacement, V1 theta 1, V2 theta 2. Then you can find out moment, that is the stress resultant, EI d square V by dx square. So EI into epsilon, this is my epsilon, that is EI B into Q, that is the moment. Okay, we'll need these values when we derive the stiffness matrix of a beam, because we are going to derive the stiffness matrix of different element using this concept, using this stress, strain displacement matrix later on. That is nothing but your variational approach of deriving strain displacement matrix. We'll derive it later on. These will be needed later on. Now here I have given one small problem just to understand how we get the value of N1, N2. Evaluate xi, N1 and N2 at P, and if U1 is equal to 0.03 inch and Q2 is equal to, it should be U2, not Q2. U1 and U2 I have used. So one is U1, another one is U2. Is equal to minus 0.005 inch. Determine the value of the displacement U at the point P. Also find the strain at P. Okay. So this is a simple problem. We have been given the bar element. Then x coordinates are given. X1 at node 1 is 20 inches. X2 at node 2 is 36 inches. We have given the x coordinate of this point P. It is 24 inches. So from this given data, we need to evaluate the value of xi, N1 and N2 at point P, who has coordinate x is equal to 24. Okay, so we can use this concept. You can use the relationship between x and xi to find out the value of xi. Okay, so I think you can solve it, or should I solve it for you? I think we'll be able to solve it, because you know the relationship between xi and x. Using that relationship, we find the value of xi. So what is the relationship xi and phi? Xi and x, I have given here just now. I forgot. It should be here, somewhere here. Yeah, here. This equation. Well, okay. So this is the relationship between xi and x. So from here, you have been given the value of x. X is given. Okay, so put the value of x and x1. Length of the element is given because x1 and x2 is given. So you can find out the length of the element. So that will give you the value of xi. Hope all of you have understood. From this expression, you find the value of xi, putting the value of x, x1 and x2. And L is nothing but length of the element, that is equal to x2 minus x1. Okay. So once you know this value, then you can find out the shape functions. You know the expression, shape functions for N1 and N2. N1 is equal to 1 minus xi by 2 and N2 is equal to 1 plus xi by 2. So put the value of xi, whatever you get from this expression, in the expression of N1 and N2, and then you find the value of N1 and N2. So once you know the N1 and N2, then you can find out the strain using this expression. Strain is equal to what? Strain is equal to here. Strain is equal to B into Q. Q is the nodal displacement. U1, U2. U1, U2 is given. U1, U2 value is given in the problem. Displacement at node 1 and 2 is given. These two values are given. And B, you know, it is minus 1 by L and 1 by L. So Q, you know, B, you know, therefore you can calculate strain. Strain is equal to B into Q. Understood? So that way you can find the strain. Strain is not dependent, it will be constant throughout the element. It is not dependent on the position. It is not dependent on the value of xi. Though you are asked to calculate the xi, using the xi you can find out the shape function. Okay, but strain is not function of shape function, because strain is function of B alone. B is a constant. It is function of the nodal displacement. So therefore your strain will be constant throughout the element. It will not vary from one point to another point. It is not function of xi for a two-noded bar element. But for a three-noded bar element, we have to find out B matrix from the given xi. You see, for a three-noded bar element, the B is not constant. B matrix is function of xi. This is xi. So if it were a three-noded bar element, in this particular given problem, if the bar were a three-noded bar element, in that case you would have been given U1, U2, U3. Then you find the value of xi. Then you find the value of N1, N2, N3. And that will give you the value of displacement at that point. Displacement will be equal to N1 U1 plus N2 U2 plus N3 U3. Also you can find out the B matrix using this expression. B matrix at that point you can find out. Then once you know the B matrix, then you can find out the strain is equal to B into Q. Q is nothing but the nodal displacement vector, U1, U2, U3. So that way you can solve the problem. Given problem. Very, very simple. So next let us discuss the strain displacement matrix for a three-noded triangular element, or CST. CST means constant strain triangle. I already told you why it is called as constant strain triangle. It has three nodes, so displacement at any point will vary linearly, and therefore strain will be constant throughout the element. Therefore it is called as a constant strain triangle. So let us consider this triangular element having node 1, 2, 3 like this, and U1, V1, U2, V2, U3, V3. They are the displacement of the node 1, 2 and 3. Then if I select any point within the element, having displacement U and V and coordinate xi and eta. Let's say that coordinate xi and eta is given to you. Then at that particular point, displacement U and V you can find out using the shape functions and the nodal displacement. So U will be equal to N1 U1 plus N2 U2 plus N3 U3. V will be equal to N1 V1 plus N2 V2 plus N3 V3. So this can be written in this form. UV will be equal to N1 0, N2 0, N3 0. And the displacement vector is U1 V1 U2 V2 U3 V3. Similarly, V will be equal to 0 into U1 plus N1 into V1 plus 0 into U2 plus N2 into U3 plus N2 into V2 plus 0 into U3 plus N3 into V3. So that way you can find out the displacement in terms of nodal displacement vector. This is my nodal displacement vector. So this is my shape function matrix. Then what is strain? In case of triangular element, it is a 2D element. So for 2D element, how many components of, for 2D analysis, how many components of strains we have? We have 3 components of strains: epsilon xx, epsilon yy, and epsilon xy. And they are related to the displacement at any point using this derivative. Epsilon xx is equal to del v by del x. Epsilon yy is equal to del v by del y. Epsilon xy is equal to del u by del y plus del v by del x. This I have already explained in general, just in the beginning. So strain is equal to epsilon xx, epsilon xy, epsilon yy, epsilon xy into this matrix, into this strain displacement matrix. Okay, so this is nothing but your strain displacement matrix. This is your B matrix. So we need to find out this B matrix for a triangular element. So you need to find out these derivatives. Once you find out this derivative, if you put this value in this expression, this will be your B matrix. Understood? So for a triangular element, the size of the B matrix will be equal to 3 by 6. I have already told you. So this is my B matrix. We need to find out this B matrix. So derivation of, okay. So this derivation I have not done. You can leave this derivation. Okay, you can also leave this derivation. Otherwise, again, I need 10-15 minutes to explain. Simply the procedure is same. You know N1. Either you can use a natural coordinate system or you can use the Cartesian coordinate system. If you use a natural coordinate system, it will be function of the area A1, A2, A3. And if you use the Cartesian coordinate system, it will be the function of x1, x2, x3. Ultimately, A1, A2, A3 are also function of x1, x2, x3, y1, y2, y3. And your Cartesian step function also will be function of x1, x2, x3, y1, y2, y3. So any1 can be used. It will be very long expression. That's why I have omitted. So you can simply consider up to this part. Okay. Now we'll go to the next topic. So B matrix is done. We have derived B matrix for 2-noded bar element, B matrix for 3-noded bar element, B matrix for beam element, and B matrix for constant strain triangle. Next we'll discuss how to derive the element stiffness matrix using the principle of variation or from variational principle. We'll use Rayleigh-Ritz method or potential energy approach to derive this element stiffness matrix and element stiffness equation of an element. Okay. For that, the general expression for potential energy is given as pi is equal to U plus work potential, where U is the strain energy and WP is the work potential. Work potential is nothing but the negative of the work done by the external and reaction acting on the body. So it is the work done by the external forces. In FEM, the problem domain to be solved is divided into number of elements. And then the potential energy of the element can be written in elemental form like this. So this is a general expression. Now we can write the expression for potential energy of an element like this. So pi is the potential energy of a particular element or generic element is equal to UE. UE is the strain energy of that element plus work potential of that particular element. Then the total potential energy of the whole problem domain will be equal to sum of this potential energy of the all elements. So total potential energy of the whole domain pi will be equal to summation of pi E, where E will vary from 1 to number of element. N is the number of element. We have to add the potential energy for each and every element. That will give you the potential energy of the whole system or whole domain. So pi will be equal to I is equal to 1 to NE UI plus I is equal to 1 to NE WP I. This is I or E, whatever you write. It is just an index I have used. Or here you can write also E is equal to 1 to NE. E is equal to 1 to NE. NE means number of node. Okay. As pi is equal to U plus WP, so we have to add the strain energy of all the elements. You have to add the work potential of all the elements. Then that will give you the potential energy of the whole system. Now what is strain energy? Strain energy of an element will be equal to, this is a general expression for strain energy, half into integration over volume, epsilon transpose sigma into dV. This is a general expression for potential energy. Now here we are using the potential, we are finding the strain energy. Here we are finding the strain energy of an element. So therefore we have to integrate this expression over the volume of the element. So strain energy of an element will be equal to half into integration over volume of the element epsilon transpose sigma dV, where V is the volume of the element. Now we know that sigma is equal to C into epsilon, we have discussed. Stress can be related to the strain using the constitutive matrix. C is the constitutive matrix. It will have number of components depending on the dimension or the number of components of stresses and strain. We will have different sizes of this C matrix. For 1D analysis, it will have only one element. For 3D analysis, it will be 3 by 3 matrix. And for 2D analysis, it will be 3 by 3 matrix. And for 3D analysis, it will be 6 by 6 matrix. That we have already discussed in the beginning. So in general, C is a constitutive matrix which relates stress with strain. Okay. Then what is strain? We have simply just before we have derived the relationship between strain and the nodal displacement using the B matrix. So epsilon is equal to B into Q, where B is your strain displacement matrix and Q is your nodal displacement vector. So that will be a function of the displacement of the nodes. So ultimately, the stress also can be written in terms of the nodal displacement. So your stress can be written in terms of nodal displacement using this equation, where epsilon is equal to B into Q. This we have already derived. B for different types of element we have derived. So knowing the constitutive matrix C, we can find out the expression for sigma in terms of your nodal displacement matrix Q, where Q will be equal to U1, U2 for a 2-noded bar element, U1, U2, U3 for a 3-noded bar element, U1, U2, V1, V2, U3, V3 for a 3-noded triangular element. So we'll have different vector depending on the number of nodes in an element and type of the element. So these are the general expression for stress and strain, which can be written in the expression of strain energy. So if I use that expression of strain energy, U was half into sigma transpose epsilon into dV. Here you see, what is U? U is equal to this, epsilon transpose or sigma transpose. See, this can be written in terms of epsilon transpose or sigma transpose into epsilon. Both are same. You don't be confused with that. And C transpose is equal to C for linear isotropic elastic material. Okay. So either you can write in this form or sigma transpose into epsilon. Both are correct. So if we replace these values, this equation, in this equation, what will get? Epsilon, what will be epsilon transpose? Epsilon is equal to B into Q. So what will be epsilon transpose? Epsilon transpose will be equal to Q transpose B transpose. Okay. If epsilon is equal to B into Q, epsilon transpose will be equal to, this will change the position. It will be Q transpose B transpose. Position of a matrix matters in matrix analysis. So therefore, when we find out epsilon transpose, it will be Q transpose, not B transpose, Q transpose. That you should remember. So putting these values in the expression of U, will get UE is equal to half integration over volume of the element. This is my value of epsilon transpose. Epsilon transpose is equal to Q transpose B transpose. Okay. Then this is the value of sigma. Sigma is equal to C into B into Q. C into epsilon. Epsilon is equal to B into Q into dV. Then what is Q or Q transpose? Q and Q transpose are the nodal displacement vector. So for a given element, there are some constant values. They are the displacement of the nodes. So from the analysis, whatever value we will get, they are not function of anything. They are constant values. So therefore, these values can be taken out of the integration. They are not varying within the element. They are the values at the nodes of the element. So therefore, they can be taken out of the integration. So we'll have half into Q transpose, integration over volume, B transpose C B dV, then bracket. Here also I should use one bracket here. Oh, I have used. It should be okay. Anyway, into Q. So this Q transpose and Q, they have gone out of the integration. They have gone out of the integration. So this is my remaining portion inside, which will be called as your stiffness matrix. Okay. So this is my stiffness matrix of an element. So UE will be equal to half into Q transpose K of the element into Q. So this KE is nothing but integration of our volume of the element B transpose CB dV. Okay. So from this we got the general expression of element stiffness matrix. Okay. So in equation 4, Q is the nodal displacement vector of an element and is constant. KE is the element stiffness equation, not equation, element stiffness matrix. Sorry, here I have done mistake. It is not element stiffness equation. It is element stiffness matrix. I should write here matrix. This is element stiffness matrix. This is element stiffness matrix. Okay. So element stiffness matrix is equal to integration over volume B transpose CB dV. So if we know this expression for B, C for a given element, we can find out the expression for K of that element, stiffness matrix of that particular element. Okay. Now from this expression, see, from strain energy we got the expression for K. Now from the potential energy expression we can derive the global stiffness equation or element stiffness equation. Same. So let us try to derive this global stiffness equation. Now in equation 1, the term work potential is the work potential of the element. WP is the work potential of the element that I have already told you. In the equation 1 means this equation. Here, pi is equal to summation of E is equal to 1 to any UE plus E is equal to 1 to any WP of the element. So this WP of the element is the work potential of the element. Okay. We know the expression of the work potential. We have already discussed what is a work potential. Work potential is nothing but the work done by the external forces. So in an element, there may be body forces, there may be surface traction, and it also may be acted upon by point load. These are for an element, in context to element, not in context to the whole domain. In case of Rayleigh-Ritz method, Galerkin's method, we derive this for the whole domain, but here we are deriving in context to element. That is the difference between FEM and these two methods of approximate analysis that you should remember. So we are finding the work potential of an element. So that element may have body force. It also may be acted upon by surface traction over the surface of the element. It also may be acted upon by the point load at any point in the element. But usually the point load will act at the nodes that I already told you. If we need to analyze something, for example a bar, and bar is subjected to some point loads, then wherever there is a point load at a particular point, we have to put a node that I already told you. So therefore, the point load will always act at the nodes. So therefore, when you find out the work potential for the point load here in this term, this point load will always act at the nodes of the element. There is no load, no point load along the length of the element or along the volume of the element or within the area of the element. Therefore, this point load will be your nodal loads. Therefore, the corresponding displacement to find out the work potential. Work potential is the work done. What is work done? Work done is equal to displacement. So the work done due to point load will be equal to the point load into your displacement where these point loads are acting. So we may have point load in different directions. We may have point load along X direction. We may have point load along Y direction. We may have point load along Z direction. So to find out the work done by the point load, you have to find out the work done by all these point loads in different direction. For example, let's say at the node we have point load acting Px, Py and Pz. Then what will be the work potential or work done by the point load?
it will be px into displacement along x direction, that is u. So px into u plus py into displacement along y direction, that is py into v, plus pz into displacement along z direction, that is pz into w. So that is why I have written in a vector form. It is a vector. It includes the three components of displacement along x, y, and z direction. And this vector includes the three components of the point load which may act along x, y, and z direction. If it is a 1D problem, there will be only one component. If it is a 2D problem, there will be two components. If it is a 3D problem, there will be three components. So depending on the number of the dimensions, we may have different components of the displacement and corresponding forces here. So we may have three components here, we may have three components here, depending on the dimension. So this is the work done by the point load. So this ui, whatever I have written here, that can be replaced by the nodal displacement vector qi. Okay, later on we'll see that. But here, in this term, in the body force term, let's say the element is subjected to some body force Fb per unit volume. Fb is your body force per unit volume. Again, this body force may have three components. It may have Fbx, it may have Fby, and Fbz. So body force may have three components acting along x, y, and z directions. Similarly, we will have corresponding component of displacement along x, y, and z direction. So to find out the total work done by this body force, I have to find out the body force work done by body force along all these three directions. So that is why you have to write like this. U transpose Fb means U transpose will have Ux, U V W, and Fb means Fbx, Fby, Fbz. So work done will be equal to U into Fbx plus V into Fby plus W into Fbz. So that in general can be written like this in matrix vector notation. So this is the work done by the body force per unit volume. Then we have to multiply it by the volume. We have considered an elementary volume. So this is the work done by the elementary volume dV. So when you multiply Fb by dV, it will give you the force acting on that small elemental volume dV. Then if we integrate this term over the volume of the element, that will give you the total work done by this body force within that element. So this term will give you the work done by the body force acting in the element. Next we have the surface traction. So surface traction also may have three components, Fsx, Fsy, and Fsz. So this is a vector. Similarly, corresponding displacement component will have u, v, and w. So to find out the work done by the surface traction, the total work done by the surface traction per unit area will be equal to u into Fsx plus v into Fsy plus w into Fsz. Then these terms must be multiplied by an elemental surface ds to find out the work done by the surface traction acting on this elemental area ds. Then you have to integrate it over the surface along which this surface traction is acting to find out the work done by this whole surface traction. Okay, so that way we can find out the work potential. So it will have three components: work potential due to body force, work potential due to surface traction, and work potential due to point load. So here I have written U transpose is equal to UVW, displacement at any point in the three directions. FB is the body force vector, FBX, FBY, FBZ transpose, it is a column vector. Fs is the surface traction vector, Fsx, Fsy, Fsz transpose, again it is a column vector we have used here. Then Pi is the point load acting at point I or at node I, because point load will act only at the nodes I have already explained. We also know that U is equal to NIUI, V is equal to NIVI, W is equal to NIWI. That we have already explained while explaining the shape functions. So U, V, W are the displacements at any point within the element. So they can be related to the nodal displacement using the shape functions. So in general, we can write like this. I have already written this. U, V, W is equal to, it can be written like this. So U1, V1, W1, U2, V2, W2, U3, V3, W2 up to the number of nodes. So we can relate this displacement at any point within the element in terms of this nodal displacement vector. We can write using this shape function matrix. So this is my shape function matrix. We can write the displacement at any point in terms of this nodal displacement using this shape function matrix. So in matrix vector notation, in compact form, we can write U is equal to N into Q. U will be equal to N into Q, where U is equal to, where N is the shape function matrix and Q is the nodal displacement vector, and U is the displacement at any point, which will have 3 components in general. Understood? So what will be U transpose? If U is equal to N into Q, then U transpose will be equal to Q transpose N transpose, where Q is the nodal displacement vector, N is the shape function matrix. So U can be written in terms of my nodal displacement vector of the element. So if you replace the value of U transpose in the expression of work potential, what will get? Work potential will be equal to minus Q transpose integration N transpose FB dV. I have taken out this Q transpose outside this integration because Q is constant term. They are not varying within the element. They are the displacement at the nodes. So they are constant with respect to that particular element. So therefore they can be taken out of the integration. So we have replaced U transpose by Q transpose N transpose, and we have taken out this Q transpose out of this integration. So ultimately work potential can be written like this, and this UI can be directly written as Q, because I already told you wherever there will be point load, it will act at the node. So whatever corresponding displacement we will have, there will be the nodal displacement. So work potential can be now written like this. So if I take Q transpose common, then I have already explained this. In the above equation, we can replace UI transpose by Q transpose as point load of an element will always act at the nodes. So therefore, if I take this Q transpose common, work potential will be equal to minus Q transpose into this. Okay, and these are nothing but your nodal force vector. So this particular expression will convert the body force in terms of nodal force. This particular expression will convert the surface traction within the element in terms of nodal force, and this is already a nodal force. So therefore, when we sum up all these forces, we will get the nodal force vector of the element. So this will be my nodal force vector. So work potential is equal to minus Q transpose FE. FE means the nodal force vector of an element E. Okay. Now, this is FE I have written here. The first term in the above equation is the contribution from the body force. This is the contribution from the body force. Second term is contribution from the surface traction. And third term is contribution from the point load. So ultimately these will contribute to the element load vector. And the first and second term are called as, consistent load vector due to body force and surface traction respectively. Because body force and surface traction will act throughout the element. But in an FEM we have seen that load must act at the nodes. There should not be any load within the element. So using this expression we can find out the equivalent point load due to body force, equivalent point load due to surface traction. So those body force vector and surface traction vector will be called as consistent load vector. Consistent load vector due to body force and surface traction. That will derive for different types of element. We can derive. So now using equation 4 and 5 in equation 1. Equation 1 was for your total potential energy. Total potential energy is the sum of the potential energy of the whole system. So that will be summation of I is equal to 1 to number of element into this is your U strain energy and this was your work potential. Okay. Then in this expression, if I sum all the nodal displacement vector, this is my nodal displacement vector. Here also I have nodal displacement vector. So if I sum up nodal displacement vector of the elements, that will give you my global displacement vector. Understood? So summation of Q transpose or Q of the element will give you the displacement vector of the whole system, which will be your global displacement vector. And then summation of here also Q transpose, summation Q transpose, this will give you the nodal displacement vector from the second term. And summation of this nodal force vector will be the global force vector. So this can be written like this. We can remove this summation term. We can write in terms of global displacement vector, and then summation of 1 to NE into K. That means if we sum up all the element stiffness matrix of the element, that will give you the global stiffness matrix. So pi is equal to half Q transpose KQ minus Q transpose F. So this is the expression for total potential energy of the system. Okay. So Q is the global nodal displacement vector, K is the global stiffness matrix, and F is the global nodal force vector. Now, if we use the minimization of potential energy approach, if this Q are the solution for the nodal displacement, then this pi must be minimum with respect to this Q. So therefore, differentiating this equation with respect to Q will get KQ is equal to F. If you differentiate this equation 6, with respect to Q, there are two Q terms, so that you can think like Q square. So if you differentiate this with respect to Q, we will get 2Q. So half and 2 will cancel. Ultimately, we will have remaining K into Q. Then from this expression Q into F with respect to, if we derive it with respect to Q, this Q term will go and we'll have only F and equate to 0. Del pi by del Q must be equal to 0. So that will give you KQ minus F is equal to 0. KQ minus F is equal to 0 means KQ is equal to F. So this is our global stiffness equation. This is our global stiffness equation. Okay? Where K will be equal to summation of KE. K is equal to summation of KE. Here you see. K is equal to summation of I is equal to 1 to NE into KE. Summation of all element stiffness matrix will give you the global stiffness matrix that we already know. And summation of all displacement, nodal displacement vector will give you the global displacement vector, the nodes. Okay, so Q you know, K you know, Q and F you know. F is the summation of the all nodal displacement vector, and nodal displacement vector you can derive for the body force, for the surface traction, and point load you can directly get it because they will act at the nodes. So consistent load vector due to body force and surface traction you can determine, then you assemble them, that will give you the global force vector, global nodal force vector. So this is our in general finite element equation which we have derived using the concept of minimization of potential energy or Rayleigh-Ritz method, because Rayleigh-Ritz method is based on the minimization of potential energy. Okay. So we got the potential energy. From the potential energy, we got the expression for
Ma'am. Ma'am. Ma'am, I can't hear you.
Can you hear now?
No, yeah. I can hear you now.
Someone has muted me. Please don't do anything because you can also do na. So don't do this.
Okay, ma'am.
Someone has muted me. Okay. So don't do this. I think now all of you can hear. So we have derived the general expression for global stiffness equation. Also we have derived the element stiffness matrix. The general expression for element stiffness matrix is given like this. K is equal to integration over volume B transpose CV dV that we have derived. Now we'll derive this expression for a two-noded bar element. This is my two-noded bar element. Node 1, it has displacement U1. Node 2, it has displacement U2. At any point, we have displacement U. At node 1, x equal to x1. At node 2, x equal to x2. At this particular point, the value of x is equal to x. I have used their Cartesian coordinate. It is possible also use to. It is also possible to use your natural coordinate. Okay, you'll get the same expression ultimately. Okay. Now, what is the B matrix for a bar? Before that, what is the C matrix for a bar element? Okay, for a bar element, it has only forces acting along x direction. So it has only one component of stress and one component of strain, one component of displacement. So when you relate stress with strain, there must be only one entry in the C matrix because sigma is equal to C into epsilon. Sigma is equal to C into epsilon. There is one component of stress, one component of strain. So there will be only one entry in the C matrix and that is equal to E. So C will be simply equal to E for a one-dimensional element because it has only one component of stress and strain. So we need only one entry in the C matrix. It will have only E. We know sigma is equal to E into epsilon for a bar. So therefore, in this expression, C will be equal to E. Good? The next, what is B? For a bar element, B is equal to minus 1 by L and 1 by L. Then B transpose will be equal to here. It will be a column vector. B is a row vector. So B transpose will be a column vector. So put these values of B in this expression. B and B transpose and C in this expression. Again, what is dV? What is dV for a bar element? For a bar element, dV you can write as dA into dx. dA into dx. If we consider a prismatic bar, prismatic bar means the cross section is constant throughout the bar. Then integration over area dA will be equal to A. That means throughout the length of the bar, the cross section is constant. Therefore, integration over volume can be transferred into integration over length alone. So here I have replaced the value of B transpose. This is my B transpose. Then E I have written here. E is a constant term, so it can be written anywhere now. And this is B. B transpose B into E. C was at the middle, but as C is constant, it can be taken out. It can be even taken out in this side also. So integration over volume, B transpose B into E into dV. Then integration over volume I can write as integration over length and integration over area. So this B transpose B is not dependent on the cross section or length of the element. They are constant term, 1 by L minus 1 by L. They are constant. So they also can be taken out of the integration. Okay. So we have integration over area dA into dx. Then ultimately we will have integration over area dA will be equal to A. So EA and 1 by L square. If I multiply this, two matrix or two vector, we will get 1 by L square minus 1 by L square minus 1 by L square and 1 by L square. This is 2 by 1. This is 2 by 1 and this is 1 by 2. So if we multiply, we will get 2 by 2. So ultimately this will be a 2 by 2 matrix. And integration over area dA is equal to A, that can be taken out. So EA by 1 by L square is common to all the elements, that can be taken out. So we have EA by L square. Then integration over length, this also can be brought in this side because these are constant. Okay. So ultimately we have EA by L square, 1 minus 1 minus 1 1, and integration over x1 to x2 dx, because it is integration over length. So what is the length of the element? Length of the element varies from x1 to x2. Okay. So x1 to x2 dx will be equal to x2 minus x1, that will be equal to L. So if I replace that L, we will get that 1 L will be cancelled out here with this L square. So ultimately we will get AE by L, 1 minus 1 minus 1 1. So this is the same expression we got that we derived directly using Hooke's law for a bar element. So using this concept also we got the same K matrix. Understood? So this is the K matrix for a bar element. K is equal to AE by L, 1 minus 1 minus 1 1. Okay. Similarly, we can derive the element stiffness matrix for a 3-noded bar element. Okay. For 3-noded bar element, it is not possible to derive using Hooke's law directly. So we have to use this particular expression to derive the K matrix for a 3-noded bar element. Okay. So here it is better to use the natural coordinate system because the integration will be easy. Here you see we need to integrate. You see we need integration. Here they are constant, so there are no problem. But if the B matrix here were function of xi, then we would have to do the integration over the xi. So therefore, when we derive the K matrix, there will be one integration terms. So when this integration will be there, if these entries will be in terms of xi and eta, your integration limit will be always from -1 to +1 because xi and eta values always varies from -1 to +1. Therefore, when you write the shape function in terms of natural coordinate system, then your B matrix will be function of xi and eta, natural coordinate. In that case, your integration over the volume becomes very easy. Your limit of integration will be always from -1 to +1. So that is the beauty of this natural coordinate system. That is why we always derive the shape function in terms of this natural coordinate system so that this integration becomes simple. So let us derive the element stiffness matrix for a 3-noded bar element. So we have considered a 3-noded bar element here. At the node 2, xi is equal to 0, it is at the center. At node 1, xi is equal to -1. At node 3, xi is equal to +1. And we have selected any point here where the coordinate is xi or x. But we are not going to use this Cartesian coordinate. We will use this natural coordinate. Okay. And we also have the relationship between xi and x. This I have already discussed many times. So from here we can find out dxi will be equal to 2 by L dx, or dxi by dx is 2 by L, or dx by dxi is equal to L by 2, that we already know. So dx will be equal to L by 2 dxi. This may be needed. To convert the integration from x in terms of xi, we may have to use this relationship. That's why I have derived here. Then what are the shape functions for a 3-noded bar element? For a 3-noded bar element, n1 is equal to xi into xi minus 1 by 2, n2 is equal to 1 minus xi square, n3 is equal to xi into xi plus 1 by 2. And we have derived the B matrix also for a 3-noded bar element, that is by B matrix. Then what is my K? General expression for K of the element is equal to integration over volume B transpose C B dV. Here also C is equal to E. It is a bar element, so we have only stress and strain in one direction. Therefore, C will have only 1 and 3, that is E. So C can be replaced by simply E. Then K will be equal to your integration x1 to x2, integration over area into dA, and then B transpose B. And dV I have written in terms of dA and dx. dV I have written in terms of dA and dx because here also I have considered prismatic bar. So area is constant over the element. Therefore, we can directly integration over the area, and this will be equal to A. This will be equal to A. That can be taken out of the integration over the length. So ultimately, we will have AE into integration over length, this into this. So this is your 3 by 1 and this is 1 by 3. So 3 by 1 into 1 by 3 will give you a matrix whose size will be 3 by 3. Okay. So AE by L square I have taken out because here everywhere we have L into L. We will get L square term. So L square term I have taken out. Then I have done the multiplication. After multiplication we will get a 3 by 3 matrix. So we have to do the integration over x1 to x2 dx for each and every entry in this matrix. Okay, but these terms are in terms of xi and our integration is in terms of dx. So this dx we have to convert in terms of d xi using this expression. Dx is equal to L by 2 d xi. Then when x will be equal to x1, your xi will be equal to -1. When x is equal to x2, your xi is equal to 1. So your limit will be from -1 to +1 and dx will be equal to L by 2 d xi. Okay, so I have changed the limit here. Dx is equal to L by 2 d xi and x1 will be -1, x2 will be equal to 1. Okay, so your integration has changed like this, -1 to 1 and dx is equal to L by 2 d xi. Then individually you have to do the integration for each and every terms in this matrix. Okay, so if you do the integration, you will find the different values. I have done the integration. You can go through the file. Individually I have done the integration and ultimately after finding the integration we will get ke is equal to ae by L square into L by 2 into this term. So this is the expression for k. ae by 3L 7 minus 8 1 minus 8 16 minus 8 1 minus 8 7. You don't have to remember this equation. Okay, you can derive it, but you should know how to derive it. But you don't have to remember these terms. Okay, if you will be asked to solve any problem, this matrix must be given. Okay, so we have derived the stiffness matrix for a what you call 3-noded bar element. Similarly, we can derive the stiffness matrix for a beam element. For beam element, we have derived B. We have derived B. B is equal to 6 xi by L square. 3 xi minus 1 by L minus 6 xi by L square, 3 xi plus 1 by L. Then in case of B, what will be C? That is important. Okay. In this case, your stress resultant is M and strain is equal to d square V by dx square. Then stress and strain is related by EI. M is equal to EI d square V by dx square. Therefore, here C will be equal to EI. So in place of C, you write EI. And in place of sigma, you write d square V by dx square epsilon. And in case of sigma, you write M. So this is your expression for U. So your expression for, here I have written K is equal to half, here I have written K will be equal to EI B transpose into B dx. This is the expression of K. So you put the value of B transpose and B, do the integration, multiply, then do the integration, and then you will get the expression for K matrix for a beam element. We already know the K matrix. I have already given in the beginning without derivation. Now here you can derive. Okay, I don't know whether I have derived it or not. I have not derived, so you can derive. You can put the expression for B, you can do the integration individually, or you can refer the book by Chandru Patla or this SS Bhavikati where this derivation is done and you can see. Okay, I have omitted this derivation. So next discussion is consistent load vector for two-noded bi-element. I have already told you there may be consistent load vector due to surface traction and consistent load vector due to body force. So here I have derived the consistent load vector due to body force and surface traction for a two-noded bar element. They will be different for different elements. You have to derive it separately for different types of element. So first we have derived, I have derived for two-noded bar element, then we will derive for three-noded bar element, and then we will derive for beam, then we will derive for frame. Okay, so that many at least we need. We don't need for two-noded 2D element. We will derive this consistent load vector only for 1D element, that is bar, then beam and frame. Frame and truss, they are same. Okay, so that I think what's the time? It's 1. So I think I'll leave today because I have lots of work also to be done. So next class again we'll have tomorrow. Is it possible to have tomorrow?
Yes,
tomorrow I'll complete this derivation part. Then we'll have only problem solving part. Okay, so we'll solve some problems for bar, for beam, and for frame and truss.
So I think I need 2 more classes. Let's see.
Yes, ma'am.
So tomorrow this derivation I'll do. I'll complete the derivation of consistent body force and consistent surface load. And then we'll solve some problems. Consistent load vector, 3-noded bar element, consistent load vector for beam, for surface traction, and then we'll solve problems. Okay. So this is the syllabus left. So we'll again meet tomorrow at the same time. Okay.
Ma'am.
So I'm going to, yes.
Ma'am, this PDF is already given to us, right, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes,
मेरा
yes, yes.
PDF आपने दे दिया है हम लोगों को ना?
हाँ.
अच्छा 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 जी
ये
जी ma'am.
PDF आप अगर आपको explanation नहीं चाहिए, if you go through this PDF also you'll be able to understand this derivation.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah,
Here
ma'am.
I have given the derivation of the consistent load vector. It's very, very simple. Just you have to multiply and derive the individual term. You have to put the value of N transpose. You have to put the value of body force term. You have to put the value of the surface traction term. Very, very simple. If you go to the PDF term, then I can omit this derivation directly. You can go to the problem solving. If it is okay for all of you, then in the next class I will solve problems for bar. Is it okay? This
I think
particular function we go through. Or I will just explain only one 2D bar, then I will omit it. Okay. Omit means you go through it by yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Whatever derivation is given in this file, that much is sufficient for you. Okay. Then with this we will solve problem. Then we will go to the problem solving for bar. Then for beam, I will give you the derivation of consistent load vector for beam. That is not given here. I will give you derivation of consistent load vector for beam. I will give you, and that you can see in the book by SS Bhabikati. If you don't have, I will share the file. Scan copy of the file I will share with you, and then we will solve problem for beam, problem for bar, and frame. If I don't get time, I may omit frame. Simply I will solve one problem, a very simple problem I will solve, then I will omit the derivation of the frame part. Derivation of the frame part I will omit. I will directly give you the expression, then we will only solve the problems on frame. Truss we have already done. So frame is the modification which can be obtained by combining truss with bar. So truss with beam. Combination of beam and truss will give you frame. That will derivation we will not discuss. We will simply solve the problem. Okay, so that we can reduce the number of classes needed. In the next class, I will give you just simply in one derivation in 10 minutes. Then we will solve problem. I'll share the files with problem solved. Then we will simply discuss.
Yeah, ma'am.
From SS Bhabikati in the next class.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So can I wind up? Yes.
Same timing, right, ma'am?
Yes, same time. Tomorrow, same time.
Yeah, yeah. Ma'am.
Thank you. I'm going to end.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Shivani. Shivani.